All right. Welcome back, everyone, to the GDFL podcast hosted by the Commissioner Andrew Korn. This week, I have Trevor joining me as a guest. Say hello to the world, Trevor.
Hello, world.
All right. It's great to have you back on.
Thank you. I'm glad to be back here.
Yeah. So, this past week was a pretty exciting week of fantasy football. We had a lot of really high scoring matchups. And starting at the top here, we have my matchup with Jake, where Jake beat me 152 to 141. As soon as I was down 20 points to Jake going into Monday Night Football with Nico Collins and Jake Ferguson left. And after Nico Collins had that 75-yard touchdown called back, I knew it was going to be over just because with how bad that Cowboys defense is. All I was thinking is the Texans are going to get out to a pretty big lead here and then just going to run the ball. And there's just no way Nico Collins gets to 20 points. And then Ferguson
Yeah,
got a concussion that first drive. Like it was like, all right, well, there goes my chances of winning this week. So pretty big win for Jake.
he even beat you with one quarterback.
He did beat me with one quarterback. Yeah. So this past week, Jake had three players with 60-yard touchdowns with MVS, Cooper Cup, and JMO all having touchdowns at least 60 yards. So
That's always the worst when you're playing a lion and they have a long touchdown and you're like, yes. And then you're like, no, fantasy.
uh, that doesn't necessarily bother me so much. I mean, I have Montgomery now, so I have my Lion, and Montgomery had a pretty nice day.
Yeah.
So is what it is. Next one we have on here was Mark versus Sokol, with Mark winning 152 to 130. Mark with Taysom Hill as his new acquisition popping off. Both the highest scoring quarterback and tight end this week, according to Sleeper. So getting Taysom Hill is actually the difference in Mark getting a win this week. So good for Mark.
I'm surprised Sokol's team blew up so much, even after he sold a lot of assets. So putting up 130 when you're technically in sell mode is quite counterintuitive to a tank.
Yeah, I mean, when Goff and Amon Ra combined for 70, that certainly doesn't help your case when you have the best stack of the week.
That
But
is very true.
is what it is. Up next, we have Ryan beating Stun 130 to 127. Ryan's 8-3. I was like looking at because he's second in points against right now, and I'm like really wondering how the hell he's gotten to 8-3. And Ryan has 4 wins by 6 points or less. And that seems to be the biggest difference is Ryan's winning a ton of close matchups because he's fifth in points and second in points allowed, but it has managed to get this 8-3 record. So good for Ryan. Puts him in the 2 seed for now.
Hey, he's riding the coattails of Joe Burrow trying to make up for the shitty Cincinnati defense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean Burrow, I think is QB2 right now. Last I checked, Burrow's having a hell of a bounce back season after last year, so it's been quite the revelation for Ryan here.
I mean, it helps when the team runs like a Big 12 offense and a Big 12 defense.
Yeah, that's true. Their defense is something special, is what I'd like to say. Uh, Another one we have Shrew beating Beans by 155 to 99. Pretty big blowout. I think that I mean I've been saying this for weeks now of all these losses for some of these teams playing the dagger in the season. I think that officially does put the dagger in Beans the season. They'll fall into 4-7.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I gotta say it. Shrew's hit on another first round pick with Bowers.
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, I
Bowers is
don't want
good.
to make his ego even larger than it already is, but damn, Bowers, huge hit.
We can say how much of a hit Bowers is, but if this current standings hold, in 3 years in, Shrew will be the only team to have never made the playoffs. So we can say whatever we want about Shrew's team and how good he's drafted, but how much does that really mean if he's not getting wins out of it? So
Fair point.
up next we have Levi beating you, Trevor, 179 to 73. Uh,
Hey, my entire team was on by.
you outscored your projections by like 15 points.
I know, which
I
is who even went off. I mean, Josh Allen had a good game. Noah Gray surprisingly had a good game. I'm hopeful he could be the next tight end up in KC. We'll see.
Yeah, I think Rashi Rice has really taken more of that. Is going to be the one taking the Kelsey role. I don't really think it's going to be necessarily tight end, but who knows? Maybe Noah Gray is good. I mean, being a tight end in the Kansas City offense, they're bound to score a lot of touchdowns.
Yep.
Then up next, and Laura, not up next, but lastly, we have Chaz beating Logan 112 to 110. Very tight matchup to close this out.
I think both teams were happy with the result of this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think Logan's trying to win because he doesn't really have his first, so it's not. I don't know, not that he really is. This season's kind of a lost cause for him at this point, but
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
and then look at the standings. So Mark has moved into first. He might have already been in first. I don't remember. We have Ryan in second, both at 8-3. I'm in third. Chaz is in fourth, and then Sean is in fifth. We were all 7-4. Levi is the lone team in sixth at 6-5. Jake and Shrew are in seventh and eighth, respectively, at 5-6. Beans and Sokol are ninth and 10th at 4-7. Logan is 11th at 3-8. And Trevor, you're in the last at 2-9 right now.
Absolutely. So I think you could actually realistically break this down into three tiers here. I think the clear top four here are the top four. I think the middle four are struggling for those final two playoff spots. I mean, Stun's points for is not the greatest. And then I think the four bottom right now are the clear four bottom in the league.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I'm definitely in agreement with you there. I mean, who knows what records will look like at the end of the season? I do have a little bit. We'll be looking at everyone's strength of schedule the rest of the way to see like where teams may be falling at by the end of the year. But yeah, I'm in agreement with you there. I think there's a top four, middle four, and bottom four if we're looking at it now. I absolutely agree with that, especially if the way Sokol had just had a sell off, which we'll have more to talk about with that in a second. Talking about the updated draft order. So a lot has changed since the last time we did the draft order. So Trevor, you are still at 1. We have
Yep.
Ryan in second with Logan's pick. Sokol is holding the fort at 3. Beans is at 4 with Jake's pick. Shrew is at 5. Beans is at 6 with his own pick. Trevor, you are at 7 with from Levi's pick. Sean is in the 8th slot. Sokol now has 9 and 10 from both Chaz and I from those trades he made last week. And then Ryan has the 11th and 12th right now. So looking at the updated first round, any thoughts here, Trevor?
Ryan has three first round picks with a team that is already 8-3, right? That is, yeah, that's pretty nice for Ryan to be in that position.
Yep. Yeah, and like I think really like all of these playoffers right now could fall anywhere. I don't think any of the standings are locked in yet. I think
No.
Mark's pretty safe to being having a bye, but there's still some season left. Who knows what will happen? We have a flurry of trades made from Sokol after the last podcast was recorded. So this first one was the one I made with him. It was accepted like half an hour after Levi and I recorded the last pod. It was Kittle and Montgomery for ETN, my 25 first and my 26 third.
I really like your side of the trade in that one. I mean, those aren't 1 year rentals. Kittle and Montgomery are this year and next year. You push your competitive window into next year, and you're basically guaranteed looking in playoff competition both years with those moves, in my opinion.
All right, well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean Montgomery with the contract extension made trading for him a little bit easier. Kittle's always been one of my favorite players. He's one of the few NFL jerseys I have. I'll never wear it again after that loss in the NFC Championship, but I do still own my Kittle jersey. He's always been a favorite of mine. Very well documented that. And then another one, Sokol got a 25 first for Tyreek Hill. What are your thoughts there, Trevor?
I think this is a little bit more fair. I mean, Tyreek, I think is towards the tail end of his career. I think a late first is a reasonable price for him, but also a decent get for Sokol if he thinks his competitive window is closed.
Yeah, I think what Sokol is planning on doing is like he's will accumulate all these picks and then he's going to be active in the offseason to try and reshape his roster, whether that's through the draft or through some more of these picks. I
Yeah.
mean, it's yet to be seen. He's accumulated a lot of draft capital, and he really was probably was towards the bottom of it before all these moves. And now he's right up there with you and Ryan and Beans for having some of the most.
Yeah.
And then we have a few smaller moves that Sokol had made. This was Mac Jones in the fourth for Taysom Hill. Looks a lot worse now after Taysom Hill just went absolutely ballistic this past week. Um, is what
I
it is.
mean, Taysom Hill has one or two absolute blow up games a year and then isn't even fantasy startable the rest of them, unless there's a bunch of injuries.
There's a bunch of injuries in New Orleans right now. I
That's
really,
also true. There's always a bunch of injuries in New Orleans. So what am I saying?
yeah, like I really wouldn't be shocked if Taysom Hill's like a top two or three tight end. He might even be tight end one the rest of the season. Like he's catching passes and running the ball a lot because again, there's no one for Carr to pass to right now. His MVS and Bub Means, Kamara. I mean, Kamara is still there, but
Yeah.
yeah, the Saints roster looks pretty rough right now with what's healthy. And then another one, I sent him Kyle Trask for $1 a fab. Uh, I need to clear a roster spot. Sokol had an open roster spot. He said, "Sure, why
Okay.
not?" There's nothing really more than that.
No, no, I'll take one of those offers. Have you seen my roster? There are definitely some cuts I am making at the end of the season.
Yeah, I did think about offering you Trubisky, just for because you have Josh Allen. I think Trubisky's under contract for next year too, so that was
Yeah.
something I was considering. But I decided I kind of still want Trubisky just to hold on to him because I think he's one of the higher end backups in the league. And if
Yeah,
I ever
that's
do
fair.
need to start him, especially with Dak's injury and Aaron Rodgers being Aaron Rodgers and washed, I may need to start him in the playoffs since something happened to Josh Allen. So I'm not as concerned about Trask. I mean, we've never seen Trask in the NFL, so I mean, hopefully he's not good for my sake. But I mean, I don't really give a
Yeah.
shit if he pops off for Sokol. Good for Sokol. Don't see that happening, but we'll see.
No.
Then we have one more. I made a trade with Levi. So after I acquired Kittle, I had three tight ends. I really don't see the need to roster more than two. So I traded Hunter Henry to Levi for Deontay Johnson, and then we also swapped third and fourth round picks. Any thoughts here, Trevor?
Shit for shit.
Yeah. Hey, that's Levi's starting tight end now, and I think he is like tight end like 10 or 11 on the season. But
Fair.
yeah,
Fair.
from my perspective, this wasn't a move for this year. Deontay Johnson, I think I've always really liked Deontay Johnson. Hopefully, he signs with the new team next year.
Yeah, I mean
Gets real
he's
playing time.
not getting utilized at all in Baltimore. It's Bateman and Flowers.
Hmm. Yeah, this wasn't a move for this year. This was a move of I hopefully I viewed it as a buy low for next year. To be seen. If it's not, it really wasn't that steep of a price.
Yeah. Makes sense.
It was good for Levi though. Levi had been trying out some really shit tight ends this year and needed to get someone better.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's a look at the rest of the schedules for everyone. So I this would probably be better for people watching this on YouTube. I have it color coded by strength of schedule. And then green is going to be the easier strength of schedule, and red is going to be the harder strength of schedule. So again, Sokol is one of the hardest strength of schedules left this season, and I just from talking to him, big reason why he sold off was he had four playoff teams left on his schedule, and for him to climb from 10th into the playoffs seemed like a pretty steep climb. Didn't think he'd be able to
Interesting.
do it. And Levi's
Man,
is another one I could.
Levi's got one of the easiest schedules remaining.
Yeah, I think this is why I said on the podcast a couple weeks ago, I think the top six teams are locked into the playoffs is because Levi's next 2 weeks are a rematch with you, Trevor, and you don't have Josh Allen this week. And then he's
Correct.
against a Sokol who is just sold off as most of his team. And so those are
Yeah.
two matchups that are both should be very winnable and should get him to the 8-win mark, which would require Jake and Shrew to both win their next two matchups.
Yeah.
Which looking at Jake's schedule, Jake absolutely could win his next two matchups. He has Logan and Beans the next 2 weeks. Those are both very winnable. Shrew's got Beans and Mark the next 2 weeks. A little bit, I mean, they're both Beans are the common opponent, but that's a little more challenging facing Mark versus facing Logan. But yeah, I mean, Levi really needs one of those two to lose. I think one of the next 2 weeks because Levi in week 14 has a lot of buys. I think Mixon's on a buy. All three of his quarterbacks will be on a buy. So Levi really needs to hope that both Jake and Shrew lose at least once the next 2 weeks. Otherwise, it could be really dicey in week 14 for that last playoff spot.
Yeah, I don't know. As someone who's pretty much getting close to wrapping up last place, I just hope week 14 has some pizzazz to it. I don't. Yeah, it's always fun when there's at least one playoff spot at hand in week 14 as a neutral fan.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, looking at week 14, I'm against Chaz in week 14. I think there could be a very much which will be playoff seeding implications with that one.
Yeah,
And then, I mean, Ryan the next 2 weeks has me and Stun. So again, a lot of playoff implications. Mark has Chaz this week. A lot of playoff implications for seeding. Um, yeah, I think there's still a lot of matchups here that will affect playoff seeding
then
for
do
sure.
you think that the final seed will be 7-7 or 8-6?
I think it's gonna be 8-6. I really do think Levi's winning the next 2 weeks, and
Okay.
whether it's Levi or not, I think the 6th seed is gonna be 8-6. I
Okay.
don't. I think both Chaz and I think me, Chaz, and Stun all get at least one win by the end of the season.
Well, that's fair.
Just like again, looking at our schedules, I have Sokol this week. Chaz and Stun have Logan and you respectively. Week 13. So I'm gonna assume all those are wins. That very well might not happen, but you never know. I really do think 8-6 is probably the mark, not 7-7, as
Yeah,
I've been saying all season. And that again, a lot of that's just because Levi's next 2 weeks look easy on paper.
makes sense.
And then we kind of touched on some of the upcoming matchups this week. I'll just highlight there's two big ones I want to point out. One is Stun versus Ryan playing in back-to-back weeks. Pretty big for seeding here. If Stun can win, that puts him on a level playing field with Ryan and all but certainly clinches Stun's playoff spot. Otherwise, Ryan might even separate a little bit further from the pack with a win. And then the other one is Mark and Chaz. Again, like Mark can separate himself from the pack a little bit, or if Chaz wins, it just really will make a tight cluster of teams, potentially 8-4.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, yeah, Mark and Chaz, and then Stun and Ryan are the biggest ones of the week. I think the other matchups, I hate to say it, are pretty much decided already. I'd be shocked some upsets. I mean, there might be one, but
Yeah, I don't think Jake has Kamara or Jamar Chase this week.
I
So
have no quarterback this week, so
you got Jimmy Garoppolo going in there. You could always I don't know. You're currently projected at 29.7. I think that just means you need to update your lineup with all because you might have some bias in
yeah,
the back
I
end.
did update. I think after you did it, and I'm only at like 64. It is absolutely brutal.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty similar to what your projection was last week. I mean, last week you had all your skill players out, and this week you don't have a quarterback. So
Hey,
it
we'll see what happens.
is what it is. Okay, so this was something that you had suggested to me you want to talk about. So some trades that could happen before the deadline.
Yeah.
So what I did before we move on to the next slide is I went through everyone's roster and tried to pick out about 3 players. I think everyone or picks that people could potentially move before
hmm
the trade deadline happens in 2 weeks. I mean, I don't know if you had any other thoughts or plans on how we are going to do this, but
No, that's pretty much what I had. I kind of looked at the bottom teams and thought, okay, who doesn't fit in a multi-year plan
yep.
for this team?
Okay, so I have mine in order of the standings. So at
Okay.
least for Mark, I don't really think Mark has any moves left to make. He doesn't have any draft picks in 2025, so he'd be dipping into 2026 to make any moves. But I really don't think he needs to. Like Mark has a stacked roster, top to bottom at all positions with a lot of depth. I really don't think Mark needs to make another move. Injuries could change that, but I don't really see Mark doing anything else.
Yeah.
And then up next, I have Ryan. So Ryan has a ton of 2025 picks. I mean, he's currently in the 2 seed. I mean, if I were him, I'd be trying to buy better flexes for the playoffs. I mean, what he's been doing has been working, so maybe he doesn't. I also have Trey Benson and Marshawn Lloyd listed as they're kind of, I think, stash bets for next season more than anything, and probably will be the
Yeah.
this season. Benson's had a little bit of run the last couple of weeks, but I still think these are mostly plays for next year. So I mean, I have Ryan listed as having these picks and then these 2 backup running backs available just to potentially entice someone to might be selling? Do you have any other
Yeah.
additional thoughts?
No, I mean Ryan's been pretty heavily going after a couple of my players, so I don't know. I might be done selling. We'll see. I'm pretty much telling people unless the offer absolutely wows me, it's gonna be hard to pry someone from my hands at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much have the number one overall pick locked up at this point.
Yeah.
So I'm not too shocked about that. So up next is me. I have Dak Prescott, I think, available. I mean, I've let the league know that I would trade him. I would need a quarterback in return if I were to move him.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, because I know you hit me up about acquiring him, Trevor, and I was just like, Trevor, you're not trading Josh Allen, and you don't have a
No, I'm
quarterback.
not. No.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. It's like I'd love to get something done, but like we need to get a third team involved so I'd have a quarterback coming back my way.
Yeah.
Because like I mean Dak's the highest paid quarterback in the league right now, and he's all the contracts mostly guaranteed too. I think it's like all but 10 million of it are guaranteed. So
Hmm.
no matter how good or bad he is, he's gonna be the Cowboy starter the next 4 years. So there's a lot of stability there for me that I don't really want to part ways with unless I'm getting a stable quarterback in return. Which makes me think I'm not getting anything done, but that's kind of to be expected. Um,
Hmm.
and then I also, yeah, made that trade for Montgomery. I might just start Montgomery in my super flex if like Jameis or Rogers really aren't working out. I think my skill players are good enough where I could flex a DeAndre Hopkins or a Devontae Smith if I really need to.
QBs are king.
Mm-hmm. So Chaz, I put two names out there. I put Chris Godwin and Sam Darnold. Godwin just because he's injured and maybe could fetch a decent return for a rebuilder. And then Sam Darnold, just because I look at Chaz's quarterback room, he has, I think, Baker and Geno. Well, I guess maybe Geno's not as locked up as I think, but Baker's definitely locked up for next year. And then between Geno, Russ, and Darnold, I'm imagining at least two of them will still be starting next year.
Yeah.
So I think he probably could make one expendable if he wanted to get a flex. That's kind of what my thoughts are of Chaz.
Makes sense. I am in agreement with that. Yeah, I mean, I guess you could trade Godwin for I guess a better flex or but that's about it from him.
Yeah,
Then
that's I think that's what the move would be trading Godwin for someone who's just going to accumulate points just because Godwin's not really going to be scoring points the rest of the year. So let's see what Chaz does there. My best guess is that he probably just holds. Chaz usually isn't too aggressive or active in trade markets.
yeah, and then I mean, Stun, you have Waddle has I mean, you're selling really low at that point. Waddle has had an awful year. He's not even really involved in the Miami offense. He's still got that first. The biggest thing I noticed on Shun's team is Cooper Rush is QB2. He could stand to upgrade there if Dallas says, you know what, let's try Trey Lance instead of Cooper Rush. So
I don't even think Stun's been starting Cooper Rush though. I'm pretty sure he's been just starting a receiver.
fair, but I mean,
Yeah.
if I were him and I really wanted a playoff spot, you do want two QBs in this league if you want a chance at winning. You could get lucky winning a week or two, but you want to win three playoffs weeks and he's not in competition for a bye, you're gonna have to have two quarterbacks.
Yep. No, I'm in a full agreement there. And perhaps Chaz is the trade partner for him because I think Chaz has the most excess available. I mean, I think the Stun's best hope if he doesn't want to trade for a quarterback is hoping T Law just is healthy. I mean, that's to be seen on whether he plays yet again in the season or not.
Yeah.
Maybe getting Mac Jones from Sokol is the move, just to have that's T Law's handcuff for probably this year and next. Can't imagine
Yeah.
Mac Jones would cost too much either. So I mean, I think Stun has a few options. It's just like none of them are particularly great if he really wants to get another quarterback. But he has a shit ton of receivers. Like if he really wants to make a move, like he has like I think 9 or 10 receivers I'd consider startable on that team. I don't really think he needs that many if he, but that's up to Stun. All right.
Oh, then we got Levi. I know he's been pretty heavily trying to move Odunze. I do think the Bears end up blowing up their team, firing their awful head coach, and probably properly investing in their O line. That should clear up Odunze's stock. Allen is gone. I mean, next year, I'm pretty sure. So That clears up more targets. DJ Moore is kind of, I don't know, not in good cahoots with Williams or the team. I could see him requesting a trade in the offseason. I don't know if he's on an expiring contract or not, but I think Odunze ends up being the number one there within a year.
He's the leading receiver right now. He leads the team in receiving yards today. Like you can make a case that he's their number one receiver now. Um,
Hmm.
which I think is a bit surprising that Levi's been trying to shop him. Just, I mean, Adunze doesn't really have any touchdowns this year, so his fantasy output hasn't looked great. But he has more receiving yards than DJ Moore. And I think I think DJ Moore recently signed an extension with Chicago too. I don't know the exact terms of DJ Moore's contract, but I think he's locked into being in Chicago for at least 2 or 3 more seasons.
Yeah.
I mean, depending on what the cap hit is to move off of him, maybe DJ Moore gets moved. But yeah, I mean, I know he says he's serious about moving to Dunze. If he had positive touchdown regression, leaving a little bit, I think he might change his mind. But we'll see. The other two I'd listen for Levi were Rashi Rice and Jonathan Brooks. Rice, very similar to Chris Godwin, out for the season. Rice was balling before he tore his ACL too. So
Yeah, it really was.
could be a good fit for someone who's again willing to take a risk on Rashi with potentially the knee injury and then the suspension. But he looked really good with Mahomes. They seem to have that chemistry when that injury happened. Don't think it'll happen. I think Levi would have moved Rice by now if he was able to get a deal done, but you never know. And then the other one I have listed is Jonathan Brooks. Again, he's coming off that ACL, hasn't played yet. I think he might be active for the first time this week. And so if he does play, or even if he doesn't play, I think that's just still another trade piece, just because I don't see Jonathan Brooks overtaking Chuba Hubbard for the rest
Yeah,
of the
that's
season.
interesting. One of the highest drafted RBs off the board this year, and then you said Hubbard for an extension. Unless they truly are trying to build a Gibbs Montgomery tandem in Carolina
Yeah, so something
of
I
a run
actually,
first offense.
yeah, that could be the case. Something I saw is like you want to reward you like good players inside in a culture, and like Chuba Hubbard has been great this year,
Yeah,
especially
I
for how
agree.
bad that Panthers offense has been. Like he's been a pretty big bright
He
spot.
runs angry too. He
Mhm.
passes the eye test for the most part.
Yeah, like I think you need to to build a culture. You need to like reward good players and giving them contract extensions. Like I think that's something the Lions have done and proven this year is they've extended Montgomery, extended Decker, extended Ali McNeil, extended Goff, extended Amon Ra. I think good franchises. You don't let good players hit free agency, and Chuba Hubbard isn't going to hit it. So
Yeah.
I think again, we'll see what happens with Brooks. I think like best case scenario might be like a timeshare like how it is with Monty and Gibbs. It just that Panthers offense needs some work before probably either of them can reach that kind of status. But we'll see.
We shall see for sure.
So okay, now we're out of the playoff team. So I have Jake. I
Jake,
again he's on the cusp of the playoffs, so I don't really think he's going to trade any of these players away. Like
I
full
know,
disclaimer.
but it's so weird because like I guess he could trade him in the offseason, but I mean his team is on the edge of I would blow it up territory.
Hmm.
Or he's got a lot. I guess I mean you got pieces to build around, like the Hertz, the Chase,
And Marv.
and Marvin Harrison, but he's got a lot of aging pieces there.
Yeah, and Jake is not deep either. So like
No.
I've thought that Jake should have sold Kelsey Cup Kamara. All three of them are still really good though. So I understand and like he's still very much in the thick of the playoff race. I mean, Jake
Yep.
doesn't really have draft picks this year to acquire new talent either. I mean, he has a second, so like you can make like a bit of a budget move. But otherwise, he's kind of rocking his current core. And unless he trades these guys away, I think he's going to be sticking with it. The team that I think is most interesting right now is Shrew. So Shrew has I listed Ayuk here as a potential trade piece, and the reason why I listed Ayuk is if Shrew goes to win, Ayuk is someone that he could potentially again similar to the players I mentioned before, injured, someone be willing to buy low and get a piece that requires points. But I think what's more realistic is Shrew waves the white flag. And I think I've listed Brian Robinson, J.K. Dobbins, and Tony Pollard all as potential trade pieces. I think those are three running backs that should be appealing to contenders. They're all producing pretty well this year. And I also
Yeah.
listed Njoku just because Shrew is incredibly deep at tight end, and I don't really think you need this many tight ends. And there's definitely some teams that could use an upgrade at it. And so, I mean, I think I put Njoku out there. I don't think Njoku's going to get traded, but yeah, I think Shrew's the team to really watch closing in on the trade deadline.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, he might even wait till Thursday night to see what happens.
Hmm.
So we'll
Yep.
see.
Yep. And then another one on here is Beans. So Beans, I have McLaurin, Cortland Sutton, Dallas Goddard, who could all potentially be on the move. McLaurin is having a good year, but he's also and same with Sutton. They're both having pretty good years, both on the older side. And then Goddard's also
Yeah,
just an older tight end.
got her. I mean, I'm surprised he hasn't tried to trade Johnny Smith while he's hot, or at least for to recoup a draft pick.
Yeah, I mean it requires a buyer though. I don't really know how many people are looking to buy someone like John or Smith either. So
Fair. I mean, if I were someone who had no tight ends and wanted just a streamer down the stretch, Johnny Smith seems pretty attractive.
oh, absolutely, absolutely agree there. Yeah, I don't really know what the trade. I mean, I acquired Kittle. I mean, I think I was me and Levi were the ones in biggest needs of tight end, and we both made our moves. So I'm not sure what could potentially be out there, but I still like Goddard, the player.
Yeah,
Uh, so then I have Sokol with Evan Ingram, and then Minshew and Mac Jones. Ingram just as another aging piece. He's been pretty good tight end in my eyes. And then Minshew and Mac Jones are just like startable quarterbacks for teams looking for a quarterback. That might be the move for Stun, is to maybe trade one of those receivers for Minshew and Mac Jones.
yeah.
Um, I think
Yeah,
that
I mean, Sokol's got aging QBs that he has no business rostering right now.
he only has Goff, Bryce Young, and then those two, I believe. He traded away Kirk Cousins, and then he
That's
traded away Carr before the season. So I think he's
okay.
actually fine in terms of like aging quarterbacks. We're running a little low on time. Make sure we get to
Yeah,
the next segment. I have Logan offering Amari Cooper, Tyler Lockett, and Eckler. Again, I think these are guys on their last legs, recoup some value before they're lost. We'll see if that actually happens. And then Trevor, you had mentioned you're not really interested in selling. I have
nah.
Chuba Hubbard,
Ooh.
Pacheco, and Bucky Irving listed just as potential running backs that could be on the move. I don't really
Yeah,
think
and
there's much else
honestly,
on the
I
team that
don't
should
I
be
don't
moved.
have an aging vent that's even barely worth fab dollars at this point. So if anybody sees anybody on my bench though and wants to offer me some fab, by all means.
All right. You heard it here first. Trevor will trade away his bench for Fab. Best of luck to you in that endeavor. We'll see. And then something
Oh, all
else that
right.
Trevor and I did was we both did an NFL playoff machine where we want to talk about what teams we think are going to make the playoffs. So this is Trevor's playoff teams. You have Buffalo as the one seed in the AFC. You have Pittsburgh as the two, Kansas City as the three, Houston as the four, Baltimore as the five, Chargers as the six, and then Broncos as the seven. And then the NFC, you have the Lions as the one, the Eagles as the two, the Niners as the three, Bucks as the four, Commanders as the five, Packers as the six, and the Vikings as the seven. You
I
want to talk
do.
through these?
I do. I mean, I think Buffalo's the clear king of the AFC. I think they start overtaking KC. Pittsburgh's defense is otherworldly good, and Russell Wilson seems to have figured out his clutch gene and somehow continues to win. Casey's definitely still a playoff team. Houston's easily winning the AFC South. Baltimore's still going to be Baltimore and get in the playoffs. Chargers are looking really solid. And then there's a huge drop off to seventh place, but I think Denver gets that seven seed. In the NFC, I think it's going to be closer than people realize. I think it will come down to the final week for Lions getting that bye. I think the Eagles, there's definitely some losable games, but they have a lot of easy games in that NFC East still to go. So I think the Eagles will be right up there with Detroit. I think San Francisco figures it out down the stretch. I really do. They have too many players that have been in this position before. They have Kyle Shanahan. They'll end up righting the ship and become the playoff team out of the NFC West. I think with Evans coming back, I like them better than the Falcons. I do. I think the Bucks actually come out of the NFC South and Atlanta, known for choking, aka 28-3, chokes away the South again. Washington is too good to miss the playoffs and plays in an easy division. They'll end up being the 5 seed, and then the two bottom seeds, because they'll beat up each other, we will have Green Bay and Minnesota rounding out the NFC playoff picture.
Okay, this is actually pretty similar to what I had for mine. So I think in the NFC, I have the Lions getting the 1 seed, only lost the rest of the ways to Buffalo, with Philly also going 13-4. Also have the Bucks at 10-7. They're in the 3 seed in mine. They were the 4 seed in yours. The Bucks schedule the rest of the season is an absolute joke. Like if you really want to look at it, I was looking at it. It's like this. They have so many winnable games left.
Yeah,
There's
that's
like
why.
the Raiders, the Panthers twice. I think the Saints were on there. Like it was an absolute joke of who they have left. And I actually have the Rams as the 4 seed at 10-7. This is just kind of who it ended up being. I think because I have the standings here. Yeah, I had both the Rams and San Fran tied at 10 and
Okay.
7. And I guess
Okay.
the Rams got the tiebreaker for the seeding for this. And then I also have Washington, Green Bay, and Minnesota. You had them all at 12-5. I have them all 11-6, rounding out the NFC playoff seeds. And then I'm just taking another quick gander here. I had Atlanta and Arizona as the next teams out at 9-8 in the NFC. In the AFC, I'm with you. I had Buffalo as the 1 seed at 15-2. I think they're going to win out. I also have Kansas City going 15-2, but Buffalo has the tiebreaker. I have Pittsburgh winning the division at 12-5, and then Houston at 11-6. We also both had the Chargers and Ravens as two as the wild card teams. I think I have a little more optimistic on the Chargers than you were, and a little lower on Baltimore than you were. And then I think surprisingly, I have the Bengals as the 7 seed at 9 and
Oh
8.
wow.
So I'm just like looking. I think the Bengals, I haven't, they had them tied with Denver, but I had them both going 9 and 8. And then Cincinnati would have whatever tiebreaker is there. And I also had Miami
Interesting.
pretty close at 8 and 9 as well. So
Hmm.
I think we were pretty much in lockstep of who we think is going to make the playoffs and even what seeds they're going to be. Um,
Yeah.
like I think, I mean, I'm looking at what my playoff matchups are. I think all of these in the AFC would be incredibly sexy. Like if we had a Bengals, Chiefs, Ravens, Steelers, and then a Chargers, Texans playoff matchups, those are
Yeah.
all very, very intriguing to me.
These are the NFC games. I think Eagles would easily take care of the Vikings again. Like that's the only first round game I don't see actually being a game if these were to be the matchups on your end.
Hmm. Yeah, and then I have Tampa Bay and Green Bay, and then the Rams and the Commanders. Man, I'm not very high on either the Rams or the Commanders. They just someone had to fill in those seeds, I guess, and that's just who ended up being.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I really look at the NFC, and the only team that I think poses a threat to the Lions is the Eagles right now. I mean, I'm not going to rule out Minnesota and Green Bay quite yet. But I'm out of watching the NFC teams this year. It just seems like the Lions seem a step above, in my opinion.
Agreed. I agree.
Yeah, and then yeah, in the AFC. I mean, I have both Buffalo and Kansas City a step ahead. If I were to put money on it, and I have put money on it, I had the Lions Chiefs as my Super Bowl favorite back in February when I placed a bet after the Lions lost the NFC Championship, and also put a bet down for the Lions win the Super Bowl. And yeah, I mean, I'm pretty optimistic about the Lions' chances. I really like Kansas City and Buffalo's chances still. And then really, I think AFC is going to be a fucking bloodbath, like regardless of who the playoff matchups
Yeah.
are.
Yeah. The AFC is gonna those matchups are gonna be tough. I mean, AFC the there are four teams I could make a case for making it to the Super Bowl. The
Hmm.
NFC, I really only have two teams I can make a case for.
Yeah. I'd love to keep this going, but we are at time.
Nine.
Trevor,
Okay.
thank you for joining the show. This was a great time to have you on, and thank you for joining.
All right. Thank you, Corn.
All
Have a good
right.
one.
With that, love all of you. Best of luck this week, and I will see you.